So now I get to introduce my dear friend and someone who has been a mentor to me for a long time, Gina Mccarthy. She was the last administrator of EPA, worth talking about. And she is, if I could try to pick someone that you could design, what would the person look like that could be the leader of EPA and lead us down the path that we need to go, it would be Gina. There's no question about it. She's been working on public health and environmental issues for over 30 years. She served at the state level. In Massachusetts, she was the Undersecretary of Policy for the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Affairs. She was the Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection. Go Connecticut, right? And by the way, if you think I have a bad Boston accent, wait until you hear Gina. She has been, since she left EPA, she has been at the Chan School of Public Health at Harvard, where I got my doctorate. And is Dr. Frank here? Dr. Julio Frank, is he here? He was here earlier. I wanted to acknowledge him because she was now the professor of practice at the public health in the Department of Environmental Health at Harvard University, the School of Public Health. And she's recently taken on the job of leading NRDC, one of the most effective environmental organizations that goes back right to the beginning of the environmental movement in 1970. So, without further ado, my heroine, Gina Mccarthy.
Hello, everybody. You can hear me, right? You got the right mic? Oh, there we go. That's it. Listen, first of all, I want to thank Tony for the introduction and correct him. I cannot be his mentor if he's my mentor. This is really ticking me off. I don't know what to call you now. Maybe I should just settle with hero. How is that? Because we knew each other way back when he was commissioner of DEP. And I also went to Tufts, and so we've been hanging out a little bit. In fact, I just saw him a couple of weeks ago, so it's fun to keep getting intertwined. And I'll tell you, we both share our hero of Bill Ruckelshaus, one of the greatest people that ever walked the face of the earth, never mind ran the Environmental Protection Agency. So it is great to be here, and I am excited to be at the Intentional Endowments Network. I'll tell you, intentional endowments. I turned down a couple of invitations to come here. One was the Haphazard Environmental Endowments Network, and the other is I didn't really mean it Endowments Network. And I didn't go to either one of those because I thought it would be filled with my family and friends and colleagues, because that's sort of how we roll in my family. But honestly, it is terrific to be here. And first, I want to thank you all for being here, because you being here is a sign of a couple of things. It means you care about your institution and your colleagues. It means you care about your students, and you care about the people in the community that you serve, and you care about our collective future. That's what you have in common if you are sitting in that seat. And that is a great thing for us to begin and to work together with. Because I am here to tell you today, in no uncertain terms, that we have a lot to be hopeful for. Because of all of you sitting here, and for all of the passion and enthusiasm that is growing around the need to build a better future. Our challenge today is not just climate change. We have lots of challenges, and we need to figure out how we stand together, whether you care about climate change or you care about inequity, one and the same thing, folks. If you care about health and you care about climate change, one and the same things. If you care about gun violence, if you want to protect women's rights, these are things that we should work on together, each and every one of us, because that's how one of us and all of us can work together to define a better future. So I am excited to be here. Yes, I spent all of my working life in government, and it was well longer than 30 years, Tony. I say that, and I've been saying that for about 15 years. Mine a lie. But you know, when I left EPA, I was kind of baffled about what to do next, because I kind of had a lot of fun, and I knew that change was afoot. So I did what every good political person does. I went to the Kennedy School, because they make you feel so important, like you never actually left, right? I mean, everybody's walking around, Ban Ki-moon and Josh Earnest is coming in, and you know, you think you're back in the same old. Only I also went to the School of Public Health. And when you go to a public health school, it's vastly different than the Kennedy School. It's lots of students studying ridiculous things that are very important to researchers, but the rest of us, my eyes glaze over. And I wonder what gives them the motivation to actually learn all of these analytical techniques and the way you do research in a university like the Chan School. And it was really exciting. And when push come to shove, I actually did a fellowship in both. And I decided that the best thing I wanted to do was to go back to the School of Public Health. You know why? Because my work has always been public health. It's always been. It's called environmental, but geez, I don't count birds and bunnies. I count human beings. I count kids with asthma attacks. I count whether or not you have water that is clean to drink, and that is the quantity you need to be able to live your lives. That's how my world has always been. And the exciting thing about the School of Public Health is they were filled with, yes, very nerdy students. But you know what those nerdy students wanted? Not to be free labor for the research folks or the faculty. They wanted to make sure that they learned science, but not just that, they wanted to put science to work. Now that was music to my ears, because I never played being a scientist before. I just took whatever they said and I tried to drive change as a result that was based on real facts and real science. And every class that I did with those students was filled with really fun, wonderful stories about how we use science to underpin policies, to underpin practices, to move forward with regulations and standards and programs that actually use science as the basis for making decisions. And we talked about climate change, and nobody in that room questioned my sanity or patriotism. So it made it way better than any of my Washington experience. Man, at those congressional hearings, I would be browbeaten by folks who just somehow couldn't get their arms around the issues of science and climate change, or maybe they just didn't want to. But the students, you know, they challenged. They cared about it. They knew that they and me and everyone had no choice but to get our heads around the challenge of climate change. And it's not just the professors or the politicians or the scientists or the college presidents or the sustainability directors or the investment or asset managers or your retirement fund people, whatever you call them. It was normal human beings had to get their head around climate change. We have to talk about it. It matters to each and every one of us. It can't be the exclusive domain of universities or the exclusive domain of the IPCC scientists, who are really fun to work with, but they don't speak normal language like the rest of us. It had to be something which we personalized it, because we don't have the luxury anymore of denying the overwhelming science or disregarding the need to act. We can't do it anymore. We are at risk of not having human necessities available to us because of the climate crisis. We're talking about clean air and water, fertile land, special places that we all cherish, communities where we can feel safe and we can feel secure, with a roof over our heads, food on our tables, protected from pollution. and resilient in the face of storms and droughts and wildfires that now threaten our health and well-being. Not to mention whole communities, whole island nations, in what feels like continents themselves when it comes to the infernos that we saw in Australia. You know, young people know that because of all of us and because of science, that we have to stop the nonsense of partisan politics. We have to reject it. We have to stand much taller than that and talk about the reality in our lives, no matter who's sitting at the table, including your Uncle Henry, who doesn't think that climate change is real. I say the hell to Uncle Henry. Keep talking. Keep getting your issue out on the table. They'll figure it out because everybody else is. You know, I know climate change feels incredibly daunting. I know that because I've worked on it for decades. But let's not forget, way back when, our country was in desperate shape environmentally. If you were as old as Tony and I, you'd remember it like it was yesterday, because the rivers were burning. We had Orange County called Orange County, I think because of the color of the sky, not what they were growing. You know, we laugh now at Delhi like they're really bad. How could they be so outrageous about having bad pollution? Well, you should have seen Pittsburgh way back when. I mean, these are challenges that we all tackle together. And don't tell me now that we have to bow to the problem of climate change, or that we have to deny that it exists, or turn our back on the science that has made this country strong and grown our economy in a way that got us all healthy and a roof over our heads. We can't do that now, and we can't deny the challenges that we face moving ahead. So we're here 50 years later, the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And now I'm head of the Natural Resources Defense Council, which is also 50 years old. I don't know if that's a coinkydink or what, but, you know, if you actually think that after working this long, I'm going to be threatened by this administration to shut up, then they've never met an Irish Boston woman before. I ain't calling it a day. And you youngsters, you may be nipping at my heels, but I'm going to be way in front of you, because we have to do what we have to do for our kids. Climate change isn't about the planet, it's about us. It's about people, not the planet. The planet actually must think we're the most obnoxious species that's ever walked the face of the earth. And the challenge that we face is we've got to personalize this. I know that everybody looks at me and thinks I'm going to be so depressed. Well, go ahead and think that, because I ain't doing it. Even if I am, I'm not telling you. That's the way it is. Because I know that this administration is rolling back all the rules that we did. Who wouldn't know that? You read the papers. But look, I know that they're lousy at writing rules. I've read them. And I also know that I'm at NRDC, and they have sued this administration 102 times. That's once every 18 days. I'm going to try to beat that record moving forward. And you know what? They've had success over 90%. 90% success rate in those challenges. So don't tell me we're all going to hell in a handbasket, because I don't even know what a handbasket is. And neither does anyone else. Seriously, what is it? My mother used to say that all the time, and I used to say, so Mom, what's a handbasket? She said, shut up, Gina. All right, so that's what I guess they say to me. But look I know, you know, that when Washington doesn't lead, we can keep fighting and fighting. But the challenge we face is we've got to move ahead. We cannot wait for enlightenment in Washington, D.C., or we could be snoozing for a while, folks. But I also know that when Washington doesn't lead, just like they didn't in the 50s and 60s and 70s, guess who did? All those people who took to the streets and started Earth Day. All of those people who stood up and said, I don't need a federal government to tell me what my problems are or to drive those solutions. I'm telling them what to do. And that's how our country made it what we are today. You know, the people in this country don't just sit on the couch, eat ice cream, and watch 7 years of Games of Thrones while we wait for a new president. Not more than once, anyways. I tried it. It was really disgusting. But what we do is we act. We demand up, because that's democracy. We don't wait for anybody to tell us what we need to do. And it's never, ever happened that the federal government, pardon me for all of you people that work with me at the federal government, nobody at the federal government has ever instituted a new and innovative or creative idea that didn't start at the community level, spend about 10 years of machinations, then states go, ooh, look at these communities, we better do something. They do exactly what the communities wanted them to do, and then when enough states do it, the federal government goes, ooh, patchwork, we have to fix this, and then they do it. So why are we being negative about our ability to move forward and make change? Aren't we looking at the faces of the young people that we all work with and hang out with and that we see on our TV screens? The young people that expect us to take moral responsibility for their future. Because we messed it up, it's not up to them to fix it. So don't tell me, look at the young people, they're going to take care of it, because I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's right, and I think we have to step up, because they are amazing, and they are demanding climate justice, and we should deliver it for them each and every time. We cannot be afraid of the future. We have to drive the future and move to a better future for our children, because that's really what it's all about. Now, our children today are even getting so extreme as to talk about maybe they shouldn't have children because there isn't a path forward for a bright future. Now, I don't know about you, but that makes my heart break. That makes me realize that we have to step up, that it's really not about continuing to complain about what we don't have, but cherish what we do. We need to start building hope. We need to focus on solutions. Good things are happening because people do care about clean air and clean water and safe places to live and work and play. They want a stable environment. Democrats and Republicans. I worked for 6 governors. 5 of them were Republicans. I can't remember any one of them celebrating dirty air or polluted water. So get over it. Pull up your big boy, big girl pants and just start doing something. Gender neutral pants as well. With the advent of market-winning renewable energy and energy efficiency programs, the clean energy trains left the station. There is no debate about this. The only question is how far and how fast can we push it? That's our job, not questioning whether that is the future. We now have 9 million people every year who die from pollution across the world. That includes 7 million who die just from air pollution every day. Do you think we shouldn't push climate change solutions that reduce air pollution? Do you think people would object to that? Do they hate trees and playgrounds? Do they hate electric vehicles that perform better and don't need repairs? Would it be a good idea to have that available and cost-effective for everybody to purchase? Would we like to have public transportation? Or is that just too far out of the realm of possibility that we don't want to drive it? Do we really like being stuck in traffic all the time? Would we rather have a bike path and a walking path? What kind of sacrifice are we demanding of people in order to address climate change? The simple answer is that we're not sacrificing anything. We are building to a better future that everybody would agree to if we just stop arguing about it. Everybody would see value. Mostly the 4,000 kids who fall prey to asthma every single year simply because they live along a major roadway. What a disgrace are we to be arguing about climate change instead of pulling up, rolling up our sleeves and getting things done. Because we do have solutions. We do have technologies that can save lives today. The issue is we just have to get it done. So all is not lost when DC falls asleep. It's amazing how many people are acting. They get it. And when you meet a climate denier, you're gonna say three things. And to practice, you're gonna say them after me. Are we ready? Ready? All right, number one, climate change is real. Climate change is real. Man-made emissions have caused it. Which is why women need to rule the world. Say that one! Look, folks, we've had change already. Women are beginning to rule the world, and don't think I feel badly about that. Because I don't. Because women rule. They're always stepping up on these issues. Because we just have to. We all have to step up. And I know the men are too, they're just a little laggy. 25 states across the U.S. have joined together, and they've pledged to meet the Paris goals. These states represent 55% of the U.S. population, and if you put them all together, they'd be the third largest economy in the world. So don't tell me the United States isn't acting. No, we don't have leadership in Washington, but we have leadership across our states and across our cities. And we have to celebrate that, and we have to learn from one another, and we have to be positive. And instead of terrifying everybody with discussions of hurricanes and floods, we know that already. Instead, let's build them some hope. Let's get stuff done. Let's talk about the stuff done, like the work that you're doing. Make it known to your students and the people that you work with that you're committed to take action on climate because it builds a better future for yourself and your family and for them and their families. Stop counting birds and bunnies and start counting the ways in which we can work together with one another and lift up the people that we care the dearest about. Because that's when it becomes real. That's when it becomes meaningful. We have work to do, folks, but I know that you're working hard. And I spent quite a bit of time at Harvard at the School of Public Health. And I spent time working with journalists at a center that we created called Sea Change because I wanted them to tell people stories. I went to the American Meteorological Society and told them I would personally come and scream at them if they showed one more picture of a glacier falling in when they talked about climate change. I don't live near a glacier. That's hard to relate to, even though I get why they're doing it. Give me a picture of a better world. Give me a picture of a world that we can live in that's sustainable and that's healthy and that is more equitable, because that's what we all have in common. That's what we all want. And when I was at Harvard with Tony, actually, a little while ago, we actually did something that I thought was miraculous. We actually got doctors to take a deep breath and come to a meeting and talk about climate change. You know why? Because we need trusted advisors to talk to outside people about climate change, to cut through the partisan nonsense and get down to it. We challenge them to think about what it means to keep their hospitals open. Same thing with you. What does it mean to keep your students safe? To get them into buildings where they can thrive? To get them the kind of atmosphere of learning that brings them healthy foods, highly efficient buildings, renewable energy, that they can feel confident that you care about them just as much as you care about the viability of your university or your college. That's the signal that you send when you match your mission to the actual investments that you need to make. and I would put a huge plug in to go well beyond sustainability, renewable energy, energy efficiency, really good food, and I would ask you to build climate into the curriculum of your school. Let's start talking about it everywhere. If I can get Harvard Medical School to agree that they should talk about climate change, they're the stodgiest group ever. You can do it too. Let's build it in. Let's make sure it's never again a dirty word that shouldn't be brought up at the dinner table. That's how we make progress. And last, I want you to seriously think about how you spend your money. Because if your mission is to build a better future, if your mission is to show the values that you care about, then tell me how you explain to young people like Harvard Forward that's sitting here why you are not divesting of fossil fuels. You have to explain that to me and to them, because divestment is important. It is the biggest signal that you can make that you get it and you're willing to go for it. Fossil fuel investments suck. Technical term for those who don't get it. They're not good investments, folks. Let's get together and figure out how we use our investments to wear our values on our sleeve. You know, at Harvard, I spent a long time talking to the professors about getting active, getting their students out, getting engaged in these issues, and I think we did a hell of a job, but the one thing that Harvard hasn't been able to sort of reach beyond is how they spend their money, how they invest their money. And you either invest in our sustainable future or you don't. And everything else will become window dressing over time, because the young people, while I don't want them to be the ones that have to push us forward, they will nip you in the heels. And soon they'll be judging where they go to school, not just where the education is most geared towards them, but the ones that share their values. So let's stop worrying and let's start acting. Let's use every tool in our toolbox to tell those young people that we care about them, that we're standing tall with them, and that we're going to do right by them. Because it's their future that is at stake, not ours. And we have a right and a responsibility to do everything we can. So I know I'm a little bit preaching to the choir, but I also know that the work you do isn't easy. I know it's extraordinarily challenging. I know some of you have managed to do it all and others haven't. But the fact that you are there means that you are in a tent of human beings that care about one another. And in the end, that may be the only thing that really matters. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're so sweet. Thank you. I wish I could have gotten an A out of some of you at one point in time. All right, I can do some questions for a while, if that's okay. We've got a microphone here. Boy, you're going to have to do some running around, I'm afraid. Oh, maybe no questions. I can't see very well because of all these lights.
I've got one right here.
Oh, good. Thank you. I said I'd do questions. I never committed to answers. I just want you to be aware of that.
Hi, I'm Wendy Pulling with the University of California.
Oh, there you are.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm
Hi.
also an NRDC alum and an EPA alum, so
Woo!
thank you for your leadership.
That's great.
Yeah.
What did you do at EPA?
I was an attorney a long time ago. Drinking water, safe drinking water.
Wow, we could still use you, huh?
Yeah,
I know.
as soon as I left, things went downhill. No, I was there in the early 90s. I guess, thank you, first of all, for your remarks. And now that you're leading NRDC, And as you look ahead, let's say the scientists say we have 10 years.
Yep.
Could you give us a sense of some of the specific things that you're looking to accomplish, either through NRDC or with others? Thanks.
Yeah, and I mentioned solutions a bunch of times. Let me just give you my sort of theory of what I would like to do rather than specifics, because, the one thing, I love democracy. I'm like a really big fan. I love government, and I think the way democracy works is change doesn't happen above. They're the last actor, is the federal government, and it's designed that way. So you really just have to keep pushing from below. And I think in our quest to try to keep up with the challenge of climate change and the extreme time frames, we've skipped all of that, the level of base of support that we need to demand the actions we have to take. And I don't think we've actually celebrated solutions because nothing was ever good enough. You know what I mean? And so we've failed to send the right market signals and investments, and instead we've left, in our wake, a lot of anxiety and people feeling powerless, because if you tell them they're fighting climate change, what do? If you tell them that you need to fight to get rid of fossil fuels as the basis of our economy, I can do that. That I can figure out. So I want to change the dynamics. I actually would like to celebrate solutions and successes. I'd like to ask people to take up what's already available so you build the kind of momentum and hope that make markets shift and bring the next big leap forward. We've just forgotten how we work. And part of it is to work together. And so part of this is honestly getting people to talk about climate as if it's not a partisan issue, because it isn't. It's just science. Since when can't you talk about tuberculosis? Now, we don't often, but we did once. And when we did, it kind of went away. It's coming back. Yeah.
Hi.
We're over here.
Could you comment on some of the presidential candidates' climate change investment solutions, and do you have any opinion on those?
Sure. Well, no, but sure. Okay, this is an inelegant way to ditch the question. The really exciting part is that all my life we've been begging for a president to talk about climate change. And for the most part, we tried to get one question in a debate. So the fact that it's become a priority issue is really exciting to me. It also tells me that polling indicates to all those people running for president that people are beginning to get it. They really get it, and they do. They may not call it climate change, and I'm not a person who requires a pinky swear to get in my tent. If you come in because you don't like all of the bad weather that we're seeing and all that, come on in. If you're interested in solutions and you're going to work with me, I'm with you, kind of thing. And so I'm very encouraged by the basically how much climate is being discussed. I'm encouraged that each one of them has their own strategy on how to address it if they come into office. I'm encouraged that they keep getting more and more detailed. I'd like everybody to keep revisiting these things and look at what everybody else has to say. And so I think, the plans are getting more sophisticated. Some plans are much more sophisticated than others because you have some folks running who have been in the climate world and working on these issues for a while. So I think it's great. I don't think any of the plans count anybody out, but I do think we have an awful lot of work to do, even with a Democratic president coming in, because I don't think we will have a Congress that is interested in actually moving forward aggressively. So I am fully prepared to be as big a pain in the ass to a next Democrat as I am the current president. I fully intend to be as big a pain in the ass as I possibly can, because they got to move and they got to show leadership. And I have a couple of ideas up my sleeve that we're going to be unveiling over time with a new climate strategy that we're putting together at NRDC. But I really think you got to think about saying fossil fuels a lot more than just pointing at climate change, because it's just a lot more real. And it is what we're talking about. It's weaning down from our dependence on fossil fuels in ways that really will be meaningful from a health and an economic perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much. David Blockstein with the Bard Center for Environmental Policy. I appreciate your focus on local solutions. And so I wanted to ask you about the challenges of transition costs. I mean, we're all trying to get to that decarbonized future, but, and you talked about climate justice. So, but when you get down to local community and you're trying to do things about, in our community, we're actually trying to get people to get rid of their natural gas furnaces for electrification. We're trying to implement home energy scores and move to fossil-free future. But the problem is a lot of people don't have the money to make that transition.
That's right.
And so what are the vehicles, the policy and other vehicles to help to the people who are being left behind already so that they're not left behind in that transition?
It's a really excellent question. And I think that the issues of climate justice are going to reign supreme. They are going to be the issue. Because, one of the reasons why I spent so much time at the School of Public Health is because if you look at health data, you can really see who's being hurt and and you have to then design your climate strategies to make those communities that are being hurt the most and that are on the front line of the impacts be the ones first in line to get the benefits. That's how it has to work. That's how you build a base of support. So I agree with you that climate is not just, it's unfair. It hits minority communities, people of color, low-income communities the most, the ones that have the least ability to be resilient. And if you go into those communities and you're meeting with a woman who can't put food on the table, you're not going to have a climate conversation with them. Not twice. So you have to talk about things that matter to them, which is why I think the tent needs to be much broader than talking about climate change. It needs to recognize that we are living in a hugely inequitable world today, and that's part of the challenge we face. We have the very rich and the very poor, and the middle class is getting smaller, and it's not moving up, it's moving down. And we have to recognize that, and we have to talk about how to get them in the game in a way that's going to matter to them and their families. So I think in terms of solutions, there are solutions. The big challenge is that you can drive many of those solutions with state-level action, much fewer with community level, because you don't have the resources that states can demand from their utilities, like system benefit charges and policies on how you manage your energy system to prefer renewables and other things. But this is really where the biggest loss is of this administration, is we are not spending the kind of investment on this issue, solely investment, that would drive new change into the system, shift markets, and spend money to make these solutions accessible to the people that need it the most. That's the heartbreaking part for me. There are very few technologies that have sweeping change that wasn't nurtured through a federal program to get them the boost they need until they can be competitive, because they had a social value that we all valued. We have to somehow, we have to find a way to get Washington to do that again. And I think it's called voting.
Yeah, this is Peter Goodwin from Maryland.
Where are you?
Way out in the back.
Oh, hi.
And thanks for those.
Oh, there you are.
Thanks for those remarks. They were very inspirational. But you made a comment there about it's just science. And I wondered if you could comment where what 98 rule and regulation changes in the current administration.
Yeah.
And if we look at some of them, like WOTUS, Waters of the United States, those changes are going to be made even worse because of climate change.
Yep.
And yet that rule change is being couched in science. We're going to use better science than we've done in the past. When the science community stands up and challenges that, oh, it's just the scientists don't agree. So I wondered if you had any advice to the scientific community how to respond to the way that many of these rule changes have been couched.
Well, I know that generally I just go out and have a drink or two, so I'm probably not the healthiest thing to advise you to do. The WOTUS thing's driving me crazy because it was so hard to do. WOTUS was actual WOTUS, Waters of the United States. It's basically deciding what waters are necessary to protect for the variety of benefits that water, that rivers and streams provide, including drinking water, flood storage, fisheries, those kinds of inane things that nobody really talks about. Of course we do, we worry about it. But so it is entirely a science issue. And so they're right to talk about it, they just didn't use science to do it. And their own hand-picked science advisory board called them out on the fact that it was contrary to science. Their own hand-picked one. You know, they kicked everybody that ever got any money from EPA off so they could put industry representatives on the board. And even that board said, this is ridiculous. So I think you just need to look at it, and you need to be, I think we all need to stand up and call it what it is. It's just not science. But science matters. The courts will look at it. That's, I think, you know, NRDC is good, but they're not good enough to actually do 90% plus, you know, success rate when they challenge the administration, if the administration did its job right. They are good enough to point out that these things are not well done, to say the least. Their outcome, they're writing them towards an outcome, and we know that. I just don't understand a lot of them. That's sort of what drives me crazy. Waters of the U.S. was actually a fairly moderate proposal, a rule. You know, it took care of what it had to, and it let go of lots of things that was secondary issues. And it still got bumped. And there's a proposal now that's also moving forward and likely to be finalized very soon that basically looks at reversing a requirement that you regulate mercury emissions from coal-fired power plants. Now, this required billions of dollars of expense on the part of the industry itself. And when the current administrator, Andrew Wheeler, was announced as the nominee, when he was confirmed, I think one of the first letters he received was from the big utility lobbyist saying, do not touch the mercury rule, because we already paid for it. It's done, it's history. And actually, if you look at, there was a big announcement, I think it was just last week, that all of the air pollution numbers are down. One of them is mercury, which means you can start eating fish again. Pregnant women can eat it, kids can eat it. And this administration is taking credit for it when they're reversing all of it. Ah! You wonder why I drink. I like scotch, though, but I need no excuse to drink that. But so it's challenging. And really one of the things that I feel most badly about are the scientists looking at this, because they're not used to the bartering that goes on when you have science and how you figure out what you can do and what's too much to do. Because science doesn't make the answers. It frames the answers, but it doesn't make them. You know, there are always going to be an ability to put your finger on it and figure out whether you've gone far enough, are you gonna go too far, so that you can move forward. And the great thing about regulation is that when you set a limit, The industry usually goes far beyond it. And so you can always start building momentum. It's that momentum that I want to get on climate. It's that sense that we're going in the right direction, and nobody's punished by it. We're actually invigorated by it. And I just feel badly that we've not taken, I think, that necessary step to build the foundation that our democracy requires. And I worry that democracy is crumbling.
We have
On
time
that
for one more
depressing note-
question over in the left corner.
One
there.
more question.
Hi, I'm all the way up on the right, or your left, over here.
My left.
Yes.
Got it.
Hi, I'm Danielle Strasburger. I'm one of the founders of Harvard Forward. So thank you for highlighting the importance of divesting, but also of mobilizing academic resources. A lot of students and prospective students are really looking for opportunities to engage with climate change, both academically and extracurricularly as activists. Can you say a little bit more about your time at the School of Public Health and integrating climate into the curriculum there, and what you would recommend to the other leaders of schools here?
Yeah, thank you. I sure will. You know, the one thing I didn't mention in my quest to finish on time was, you know, one of the reasons why I think even Harvard is beginning to quake a little bit is that the students are so organized, and Harvard Forward is so organized. But I started getting involved in the divestment issue with me and 5 old dudes like me. You know, we were like, hey, what happened here? And meeting with President Pacau. Now, we were totally shut down, but that was just the opening salvo. And so it's been really fun. The faculty are actually totally with this. And so it's fun. It's everybody sort of knocked off their chairs and they're standing up, which is really quite cool. Now, the time, what was your question now? I don't remember, right? Yeah, the curriculum. Yeah, I get it, I remember. I found it very difficult. Let me just put it that way. We had to struggle to get the attention of faculty because everybody already has their curriculum written, and I think many of them were written in BC, but maybe not. You know, I mean, you have your standard way of talking about it, and climate changes that. So you actually have to prove it to people and get them excited about talking to their students about something that's different and engaging and changes things. And there's a lot of professors who love to do that. And so we tried to hang out with the ones who did. You know, I actually connected with a young woman who wanted to do a study in Puerto Rico to get the actual death count from Hurricane Maria when it hit. Because they said 11 people had died, and that was ludicrous. So she found a very clever way, working with tracking cell phones and other things, to be able to come out with a number that was more realistic. And that raised the visibility of the need for emergency response there. So, you know, and then I hung out with the chair of the nutrition department, and we took a look at Beyond Burger and Impossible Burgers, you know, those replacements. And I'm scratching my head going, I wonder why they're in Burger King. Well, they're in Burger King because they're fast food restaurants, and they are completely processed food, all high salt content. So it's just insane that people are embracing something that has little to no nutritional value and just add salt in the diets of people that are already highly diabetic and overweight. What are we thinking of? So we're starting to challenge those pieces. So I actually had to hire students that we called ambassadors in each of the different departments at the School of Public Health and ask them to investigate what everybody was working on so we could figure out how to talk about a climate link, because they wouldn't talk to us. But eventually that changed. Eventually that changed, and it came from the students. We actually had fellows that we started inserting to talk about these things. Once you open up the door, the interest comes and the change happens, but it's slow, and it has to be deliberate, and it has to be respectful. So I would have the students spy on everybody. It's what I did, and it worked really brilliantly. They're like, oh, I know somebody who's working on this, and we're like, oh yeah, let's go do that. All right, everybody. I know that my time is up, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.